come back and we'll just jump right back in to where we left off. If you haven't seen part 1, go ahead and watch it and come right back. But here we're going to start with Revelation 17:9. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sits. And he saith unto me, The waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. So here we see in Revelation 17:9 and 15, this woman sits on mountains and waters. So I want to look at the mountains first. Let's figure out what this woman is sitting on. And let's just go to Revelation 17:7. And the angel is going to tell John the mystery. He's going to reveal to John the mystery of 4 things: the woman, the beast, and the 7 heads and 10 horns. So this mystery has already been solved. All we got to do is put the pieces together. Revelation 17:8 through 18 is where the angel shows John the truth about the mystery. And I outlined some of the things in red, which I want to use to make it more clear when you're reading it. You see here in Revelation 17:8, the angel tells John, the beast that you saw, or Old English, the beast that thou sawest. He explains what the beast is. He continues telling what the beast is until he says, and the 10 horns which thou sawest, right? And he'll continue telling him what the horns are until he says, the waters which thou sawest, and so forth. So I just outlined it in red, each topic. So 17:8 through 11, he's talking about the beast. 12 through 14, he's talking about the horns, and so forth. So let's start with the first one. The beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind that hath wisdom. And here's where he tells us what the mountains are. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. And the 7 mountains he is speaking of are kingdoms. Almost every single time the Bible mentions mountains, he is talking about a kingdom. Let's turn to Daniel 7 and see what he says. He says, 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another. So here we are, the 4 great beasts. In Daniel 7:17, he tells you that the beasts are 4 kings. All right, in Daniel 7:23, he says the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom. So here, he called the beast a king, and he also called it a kingdom. And those two go hand in hand, because if you're a king, you have to have a kingdom. Because if you don't have a kingdom, you're not a king. And so he tells you these 7 heads are 7 kingdoms on which the woman sits. And the very next verse, he tells you who the kings are for these kingdoms. He says there are 7 kings, which match the 7 mountains. 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short space. And guess what? God has already told us which is the first king. Go to Daniel chapter 8, verse 19 through 23. And he said, Behold, I will make thee known what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed the end shall be. I'm reading that line because there are some people that would say, why am I going all the way back to Daniel? that stuff is in the past. Well, now you know it's not in the past. This is yet to be fulfilled. And Daniel 8:23, and in the latter time of their kingdom, what's the latter time? The last, when the transgressors are come to the full, a king of fierce countenance and understanding dark sentences shall stand up. So right there is another prophecy of the last days. We know that transgression hasn't come to the full because there would be judgment. And sandwiched right in between verses 19 and 23, right in between the two end-time prophecies, we have Daniel 8:20 to 8:22. And it says, "The ram which thou sawest having two horns are the kings of Media and Persia. And the rough goat is the king of Greece. And the great horn that is between his eyes is the first king." Did you get that? In the latter days, this is going to be the first king you need to go to figure out this mystery. And since we are in the last days, we have the luxury of looking back through history and knowing who this first king was. We know that Median Persia was defeated by Greece. And who was the king of Greece when they were defeated? That was Alexander the Great. So we know by looking back, it's Alexander the Great. Daniel 8:22, now that being broken, okay, when Alexander the Great died, four stood up for it. Four kingdoms shall stand up out of the nation, but not in his power. Meaning, there were four generals that separated his kingdom into four parts, but they didn't have the strength of Alexander the Great. They did not have his power. But history proves this. So we look back and we can see that when Alexander the Great died at age 32, four generals split his land up. It was still Greece, but the land was divided. So let's come back to Revelation 17 and look at this again. And there are 7 kings. 5 are fallen, right? Now we know who this is. Who are the 5? Alexander and his 4 generals. That was the first beast system where we started from. Wasn't the first beast system from the beginning of time, but this is the first beast system where God told us to start. So we know that the 5 are fallen are Alexander and his 4 generals. And then he goes and says, and one is. So at the time John is writing this down, the one who was in power was Caesar, and Caesar was the ruler of Rome. That was the superpower at the time. And then the Bible says, the other is not yet come, and when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And that's where we are today. So whoever this last 7th king is the 7th king right before the Antichrist, because the Antichrist is the 8th king. But we'll get back into that in a little bit. We'll just keep continuing on because I want to go into more of what this beast is. And the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th Antichrist, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. So here you see that the beast that was and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7. He's using a past, present, future tense here. And where else did we see that? We've seen it in verse 8, where he says that the beast that you saw was and is not and shall. And at the end of verse 8, he says, behold, the beast that was and is not and yet is. And he says this a couple more times later on, and we'll get there eventually. But right now, all I want to say is this Satan, might as well just call him who he is. It's Satan. He's been a part of every system in the past, every beast, every kingdom, behind everything. And I'm just going to make a real simple chart, or try to anyway. I'm not good with charts. And this represents the 4 beast kingdoms, starting with the first king. And so what I want to show you now is beast kingdoms. When Daniel's getting these visions of seeing these beasts and their representation of these kingdoms through time, I want to make it clear that there is a distinction you have to make, and it is this. In Daniel 7:3 and 4, he has a vision of the first Babylon. Okay? It says, 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one another. And the first was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. And I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked. And it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man. And a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear. Okay, so we got the first beast, and we got the second beast. Let's look at the third beast real quick. Daniel 7:6. After this I beheld, and lo, another, like a leopard. This would be the third one. But this third beast had 4 wings of a fowl. Now, this is Alexander the Great. This is the first king. This is the third beast that Daniel saw, but this is the first king and the first kingdom where Revelation and the angel told us to start to line this stuff up. And I'll show you. This is Alexander. He was the leopard. He represents the leopard. The reason he had 4 wings of a fowl is because his 4 generals took over and spread to the 4 corners of the world. And in Daniel 7:7, there's the 4th beast. So he saw this 4th beast, and it was dreadful and terrible and strong exceedingly. And it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. There's another key. This 4th beast having 10 horns lets us know that it's talking about this last kingdom that the Antichrist will rule over. And here's how I lined it up. This will represent a timeline of the last 4 kingdoms, last 4 beasts. And here's a picture that I found on the internet. It seemed to be the best one that lined up, which they all look similar, but a lot of them had bad explanations of each individual part. So this is the closest one that I liked, and I didn't feel like redoing all this. So to match our timeline, we're going to start where the first king started, where the first system started. And that was with the leopard, with Alexander the Great. So that was Greece. So if you look here with the red outline, that's the first kingdom that we're starting with. And just remember, it's not the first beast system of the world, but this is what the Bible tells us to start with when looking at this mystery. The second would be the Roman Empire. Okay, that would be with Caesar. And notice on the last one, it is 3 and 4. And let me explain why. During the third beast kingdom, look at Revelation 17:3. Oh no, I'm gone to Revelation 17. We're way into the tribulation. How could it be here? Well, actually, Revelation 17 comes before Revelation 13. And here's how you know. Revelation 17:3. As you see, this woman that's sitting on a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Now look at the 4th beast kingdom, which is the one the Antichrist will be here for. We won't be here for this. So how could it be that Revelation 17 comes before Revelation 13? A lot of people do not put it together this way. They think it's chronological, but yet that's what they're taught. So let me show you what I'm talking about. Revelation 13:1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. Okay? Here's the same beast. It has 7 heads and 10 horns. But this time, this vision He has 10 crowns upon his horns. And a crown represents rulership, kingship. Look at Revelation 17:12. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. So there's a period of time where these 10 kings do not have power. And then, once they get with the Antichrist, that's when they receive power. And how can they receive power by the Antichrist during this beast system, the fourth beast system, and we're still here? The church will not be here for this. So in between these 10 horns, these 10 kings, not having crowns, and when they do have crowns, in between those is the rapture. And we're going to break it down more. And notice this last fourth dreadful beast that's ruled by the Antichrist. Look at Revelation 13:2 and compare it to the statue that Nebuchadnezzar saw. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard. Okay, there's Alexander, the Grecian Empire. And his feet as the feet of a bear. Okay, there's the Media and Persia. And his mouth as the mouth of a lion. That's the first Babylonian empire. So he's part of all of these things. Okay, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and great authority. And so remember, the 7 heads with the 7 crowns represent the 7 kings and the 7 kingdoms. And now we see that this last dreadful kingdom is just a conglomeration of them all, because that's the reason he has the 7 crowns, is because he was and is and shall. He is a part of it all. So this last beast has pieces of all this stuff. And so let me explain all this better using this chart. The first beast system we started at was with Alexander the Great. And this was the Greece Empire. And it was ruled by Alexander. So we know that he split his kingdom up into 4 parts by his 4 generals when he died. And who took over this system was Rome. And he is the king, the one king that sits over Rome and rules the entire known world, and his name was Caesar. This is the second beast system. Now we go to this next beast system, which is where we are today. So whoever is ruling the world today, because I think we all agree that the rapture is near, that we're in the time of the end. So if we're in the time of the end, we should be seeing these things. And whoever's sitting on top of the world, ruling over all the world with military power, not a religious power, Catholicism has nothing to do with it. Compare that with all the other heads, okay, with all the other mountains. So we got these kings and kingdoms, all right? You got Alexander, the Grecian Empire. You got before them the Media and Persia, and before that you had the Babylonian Empire. And then Caesar took over the Grecian Empire. That was Rome. All of it was military muscle. Had nothing to do with religion. It was all about conquering. All these things, conquering. Nothing to do with religion. And so here we are at this 7th king, okay? Whoever this 7th king is, and I believe it to be Donald Trump, because I'm looking for the rapture tomorrow, next week, next month. I believe we're right there, and we're going to get into it. There's so many awesome things I want to share with you guys that just confirms all this. But until we get to that point, I want to try to make this more clear. So you can see here I have this little white and red block, and it represents Greece and Rome, because we're just a spin-off of Greece and Rome, okay? Rome was just a spin-off of Greece. Greece was just a spin-off of the Media and Persian Empire. The Media and Persia Empire was a spinoff of the first Babylonian Empire. That's why Satan was behind all this. That's why he's wearing the 7 crowns of these 7 kings, of these 7 mountains. That's why. And as we keep going, you're going to notice that the 7 heads with the 7 crowns, the 7 heads cannot be crowned until he's conquered all 7. All right? That's the Antichrist. We're in the 7th, and he can't be wearing 7 crowns on himself until he has conquered them all. You don't just put 6 crowns and wait on the last head and say, we'll get your crown soon enough. That's not right. It's 7 crowns for all 7 kingdoms he has conquered. And you notice that in Revelation 12:3 when it says, there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon. Well, the red dragon is the scarlet beast. It's the same thing. So this great red dragon having 7 heads and 10 horns, notice he don't have 10 crowns upon his horns, but he does have 7 crowns upon his head. So he's conquered those 7. Well, and the kingdom we're living in today, right now, United States is the military muscle of the world. Just as all the previous beast systems all had to do with military muscle. And that is us today. And a lot of people think, oh, America can't be defeated. We're too tough. And that's pride. And that's one of the reasons why God puts it into their hearts of these 10 horns to hate the whore, the U.S., to destroy her with fire. So we are in the 7th kingdom, and in order for the scarlet beast to have his 7 crowns, this kingdom today needs to be defeated. The woman, okay, is the person who's reigning over the whole world. This king who's reigning over the whole world needs to be dethroned. Once he's dethroned, then the Antichrist can take control of this scarlet beast, and we notice that he's calling it now, it's a red dragon after he gets on it, because he is using all the parts of the previous kingdoms and the previous beasts. And that's why this one's so diverse from all the rest, exceedingly dreadful and terrible. And so we see here, looking at the chart again, this one king during Jacob's trouble is the 8th king, and we know that's the Antichrist, Satan. This is Satan. And he's in control of the whole world. He's in control of this mark of the beast system. All right, this is the 4th and dreadful and terrible beast. And looking at it and adding these up, here's the 5 that are fallen, plus the 1 that is, which was Caesar, plus the 1 yet to come, which I believe he's here now. I believe that's Donald Trump that God's using. I don't believe he's a Christian. He doesn't even ask for forgiveness, but I don't want to get off track yet. But that equals 7. All right. And then if you add 1 more for the last beast system, that's 8. And we know that he is the 8th king. And it also says that he is of the 7. Right? So he's going back in the past because he is part of all the others. He is the prince and power of the air. He influenced everybody. And that's why he's crowned for all those kingdoms in the past. And the beast that thou sawest was and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was and is not and yet is. See, he's taking credit for all the other past kingdoms and beasts. So, who is the 7th king? Well, we'll worry about that later. Revelation 17:18, and the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigneth over the kings of the earth. And here I got into a debate. Well, it wasn't really a debate, it was a friendly discussion. I just didn't agree with them because the Bible doesn't agree with them. They say that the city of the Vatican, and so since the Vatican is a city, and United States is a nation with multiple cities, it can't be United States because it's a city. They couldn't be so wrong, and I'm going to prove it right now. Let's go back to Genesis 10, 10 through 12. And this is the first time it talks about Babylon. It talks about Babel, and that's where we get Babylon. Babel, you hear someone say, oh, they're babbling. It means confusion. And that's what God did at the Tower of Babel. He confused their language and scattered them. So let's look at this. And you'll see for yourselves, and you won't have to guess or have your own opinion. You'll see it right here. Genesis 10 through 12. In the beginning of his kingdom, okay, this is the beginning of his kingdom, was Babel, and Erech, and Akkad, and Calneh, in the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Asher, and builded Nineveh, and the city of Rehoboth, and Calah, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah. The same is a great city. Now let's analyze this. This is key. So if you look at this last sentence, out of that land went forth Asher, and builded Nineveh, and the city of Rehoboth, and Calah, and Rezin, and between Nineveh and Calah. Right? Look at the commas. Okay? This is one sentence. Now look at this colon. Right? You see the colon. And then it says, the same is a great city. So, do you know what a colon is used for? Let's look it up. A colon is a punctuation mark used to precede a list of items. Okay. The list of items here before the colon, remember this is one sentence. There's no periods. This colon is talking about the cities. That's the list of items. So all these cities, he is calling a great city. See, the same is a great city. So he called Babel a great city, even though it was multiple cities, a nation. Now let's look at this. Go to Genesis 11:6 through 11:9. And this is awesome too. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do, and now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Right here is the key. So the Lord scattered them abroad, from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did there confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth. So back to Genesis 11:8, the Lord said he scattered them abroad, all over the earth. He just scattered them. And they left off to build the city. Okay, how could they build the city when they're scattered all over the earth? Well, go down to the next verse, Genesis 11:9. Therefore, that word, therefore, what does it mean? Because. Because of what? Of what he just said. He just said, I scattered them. Okay, because he scattered them, that is the name of it called Babel. Therefore is the name of it called Babel. Why was it called Babel? Because they were scattered to the edges of the earth. Because the Lord did confound the language of all the earth, and from then did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of the earth. So the reason it's called Babel is because he scattered them. And look at Jeremiah 50:32, talking about Babylon. And the most proud shall stumble and fall, and none shall raise him up. And I will kindle a fire in his cities, and it shall devour all around about him. And now he just referred to Babylon as cities again. In Jeremiah 50:37 to 39, notice here, he said, a sword is upon their horses and upon their chariots and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her, and they shall become as women. Maybe that's where we get the whore and all those things from, the harlot. A sword is upon her treasures, and they shall be robbed. A drought is upon her waters, and they shall be dried up, for it is the land of the graven images, and they are mad upon their idols. Therefore The wild beasts of the desert with the wild beasts of the island shall dwell there, and the owls shall dwell therein. And it shall be no more inhabited forever, neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. Well, a lot of people I've looked online, they're saying, why are you looking in Jeremiah 50? That stuff's already been fulfilled. That was the old Babylon. That's not Mystery Babylon. Well, it just says when he destroys Babylon here, it'll be inhabited. It won't be inhabited forever. Neither shall it be dwelt in from generation to generation. So this is unfulfilled prophecy. It's either that or a failed prophecy. And we know that's not true. But look at this picture. Here's a picture of the tourist site at Babylon. They even rebuilt a bunch of it for tourism. So they are dwelling there. So this is a future prophecy. Next I want to look at Revelation 17:15. And he saith unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sitteth are peoples, multitudes, nations, and tongues. And that makes sense, and that fits right in with the mountain. So this woman that sat on the mountains and the waters, well, if a mountain is a kingdom with a king, or a king with a kingdom, well, the waters would represent all the peoples in the kingdom. And here's something I wanted you to see, Jeremiah 50:38. A drought is upon her waters, and they shall be dried up, for it is the land of the graven images, and they are mad upon their idols. So this king that's reigning over all the world, who sits on these waters, these nations, multitudes, peoples, and tongues, this water is going to be dried up, meaning he loses reign over them. And how does the seventh king lose control over the whole world? Well, the 10 horns, the 10 kings of the world today, destroy Babylon. That is how he is dethroned. All right, that's when his waters dry up. He is no longer reigning over the whole world. He's knocked off the beast. In comes the Antichrist to take over and do what he needs to do. And I just want to back up just a hair just to mention this, Daniel 7:17 and 7:23, and compare that these beasts, these great beasts that Daniel saw, are 4 kings. In Daniel 7:23, he says the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth. Okay, so he just called it a kingdom and a king. So I just wanted to point that out so you wouldn't think I was just making it up. I may have already said it before, but I'll mention it again. So the great beasts are mentioned as kings and kingdoms, and we know now that kings and kingdoms go hand in hand because you can't have one without the other. And I'm going to have to stop here because I'm already over 30 minutes, and I didn't want to make them that long. But I'll just put up this last slide, and just as a reference, because I even get confused as I'm reading. Sometimes I forget, just for a second even. So this woman we know is the one who reigns over the whole world. This beast in this last kingdom, right? Mystery Babylon the Great, right? That is the last kingdom. That the beast that this woman is on, that beast is part of the last kingdom. The 7 heads are the 7 kings, all right? The waters are all the nations, and the 10 horns are the 10 kings that destroy Babylon. So I just like to keep something like this as I'm reading, because sometimes like, wait, the 10 horns, 7 heads, 10 crowns, and I'll get confused even. So until next time, there's so much more, because as I make the next part, I'll be making a lot more connections. So I hope you enjoyed it, and leave any comments. I'm always glad to discuss things, but I have so much more I got to put down, but it's going to take me a minute. So thanks for watching.